Hello, I'm Shelley Rothus, and I'm a different kind of victim. Today's topic, we're going to be going over part one and part two to get a better understanding. I believe that the cycle of abuse and the tools for Shartism, is what I replaced the word abuse with, are pretty confusing to understand and how they work. Most people are confused when it comes to domestic violence as to especially why the victim stays in those relationships. So we're going to be going over what I had gone over in part one and part two based upon my own personal experiences. Now, conditioned normalized victimization syndrome. Let's first start with that. Now, we've heard of codependency. When we think of that, we think of someone who is addicted to drugs, and it's codependency as referred to. Well, that can actually be applied to domestic violence and the victim as well when it comes to conditioned normalized victimization syndrome. So I'll explain how that works. Now, with drugs, the codependency is, say somebody experiences depression a lot and often. They turn to drugs. Do those drugs help with the feelings of depression or anxiety and whatnot? Yeah, of course. It's a depressant. It calms them down. It makes them feel better. So they end up becoming addicted to using that substance as a way to, they think, as getting rid of their problems. Well, does that really get rid of the problems? Absolutely not. That'd be just like someone saying, well, just get over it. Well, as I've discussed in previous topics, is you have to work through your feelings. And that's a problem within the mental health field, because many will just try to get you to just get over it like that. You have to understand your feelings, go through them, and work through it in order to get to where you want to be. And I found that to be very true based upon my own personal story as to where I did just shove all my feelings in the back. What ended up happening? All those feelings are still back there in my head. I may have forgotten about them or not think about them much, but you know what? It was so much more painful when they came out. So much more painful. Instead of just dealing with them when I had them. So, codependency. When somebody becomes addicted to a drug and uses them to suppress the feelings that they're having, does that actually take it away? No. Just like if somebody doesn't deal with the feelings that they're having and just shoves those things back, all those feelings and things that happened to them that hurt them or angered them, that they suffered from, then you know what? Just like with alcohol or any other types of drugs that you use to suppress it, the next day, what? Those problems are going to be right there, right in front of you. That's exactly what happens with conditioned normalized victimization syndrome. So, what happens there with the codependency with conditioned normalized victimization syndrome is that the victim, they what? Like I said, they don't want to have the consequences. What are consequences that a victim can go through and doesn't want to? I'll use Unshorn Wizard. With Unshorn Wizard, like I had stated, he's the first person that I had trusted, and the first person that I thought was the first person who actually did care about me and was a true friend, because I never experienced that. So it was very hard for me to admit, and I didn't want to admit it. I admit that I ignored it and even denied it when people would tell me. Even my friend Nina would tell me, that's really cruel that he did this, that, and that. And I would defend it. It was because I didn't want to admit it. Also, like I stated in the other two parts, is that I was very ashamed and embarrassed because I stayed in that relationship as long as I did. And it's still very shameful and embarrassing to me that I did just that, because as I stated in the previous videos, is that the abuse became worse as to what he had done to me afterwards and how badly it had traumatized me and hurt me. I think now, of course, if I could only turn back time and unfriended him in the last bullying incident when Santa Viking had showed me that he was in a hate group saying despicable and cruel things about me. So the codependency I've been discussing with other people based upon their own personal experiences that they're still going through. I myself, in the mental health field, when I was in classes, I was told by teachers that I'm codependent. Well, other people have been sharing their own personal experiences with me that they go through a lot, which is that they give to others but don't get anything back and aren't appreciated. That can also apply to conditioned normalized victimization syndrome. That goes with codependency. So what was it with one example would be is that when Unsure and Wizard expected me to apologize, even when I wasn't at fault for certain things that happened, such as the abuse, as it caused him stress, and he would get mad at me. But what did I do? Why did I apologize for something that wasn't my fault? Because if I didn't apologize, I knew that the abuse would get worse and he would treat me even worse for not apologizing. And I didn't want to have the consequences of losing what I thought was real, when all along it was actually fake. At the time, I was ignoring the facts that he was not a good friend and he was treating me in ways that I didn't deserve. So as you see, his words of wisdom actually applied to the relationship I had with him too, is I deserve better than that. As I had stated, for the word respect is equal is in there for the letter E, equal. It wasn't equal between him and me in our relationship. If I did something wrong, I have made mistakes within our relationship that I did to hurt him, but I had apologized for it. Has he once ever apologized to me for hurting me and what he had done wrong to me? No, never. So it was never equal. So that relationship was also codependent, and that was a part of the conditioned normalized victimization syndrome. So that can actually go along with what we see as substance abuse, codependency, and the conditioned normalized victimization syndrome. Because the ignoring part is exactly what happens when you suppress things based on the alcohol or drugs you use to hide those feelings and push them back. But you know what? Just like I ignored what Unsure and Wizard was doing, is all stuff back there will always come right back out. Because the abuse continues. Just like the use of that alcohol, they're going to have to keep drinking every day to keep those feelings back. What did I have to do? I had to keep taking the blame. I had to keep apologizing. I had to keep ignoring as though nothing happened and pretended as though it didn't happen. Is that a healthy relationship? Is that equal? Is that respectful to me? No, it wasn't. It never was. So that was my example to have a better understanding of conditioned normalized victimization syndrome. So now I'll be going over the tools of Assoholics, Shartism, abuse, and how it goes. So rage and shart talk is what I call it. That's with the intense anger. I'll use the bullying incident, one of the common ones that they used on me continuously for years would be Pooty Lube. He would attack me and make up a lie and say, well, you're trying to control who I'm friends with. You've done this and that. We'd come up with a bunch of shart talk and attack me. I, of course, would defend myself. So what is it? Ooh, Assoholics do not want the victim to, what? Defend themselves. So they go to the next tool. If they're not able to get to the victim to surrender, then they're going to go to the next tool. They're going to step it up. So, gaslighting, fart bombing. Well, the gaslighting and fart bombing is when William would tell me that I'm mental and try to convince me that I just don't remember doing that to him. Like, I don't know, tried to get him to unfriend people or this or that. And those were lies. So that they give you lies, they feed the victim lies, they try to convince the victim to believe those lies. So what happens if the victim doesn't surrender? They up it a little bit more. The stare, the silent fart. We think of that as in person, where the person will ignore you. Well, that can happen online. That can happen anywhere. The silent fart, the stare. Online, that would be, based on my incident with the bullying folk clans, would be when Pootie Lou would step it up and get others to avoid me and ignore me, even friends. Well, I wouldn't call them friends. I call them shark twatters now. So that's when Pootie Lou would actually get others to avoid the person that he is attacking, the victim. They actually did that with Santa Viking, John Paul. He would get others to even unfriend the victim. And that's what he did to me too. He would get others to unfriend me. And actually, I'll step in as to where Unshorn Wizard played the part, is that he unfriended John Paul and he unfriended me right away without even coming to me to see if the lies that were being said about me are actually true. He just automatically believed it, ignored me, avoided me, blocked me, ghosted me. That's exactly what he did. So he's a, shark twatter. Projection, shark slurping. So William would get many people to believe the lies about me. Actually, in the last bullying incident, not the recent one, it was actually Shitsula and, a bunch of others that had made another hate group as to where they were trying to mentally diagnose me. They had done this every single time. As I stated in part 1 and 2, is a part of discrimination against special needs. In any type of abuse, most Assoholics will use a mental health condition to get others to believe that the victim is a problem. Also, to try and convince the victim that they are the problem. So let's go to take a little pause there. Can a person who knows you diagnose you or say that you definitely have a mental illness? No, absolutely not. That's part of the mental health field ethics. You can't diagnose a friend, family member, or anybody that you know. And even though it's obvious, not many people know this, I shouldn't say we all know this is a huge flaw within society as a whole, is that most people actually think that they can diagnose somebody, oh, they have a mental illness. Well, they don't really think they can diagnose you. It's a form of abuse is what they're doing. It's a form of abuse because they want to have that power and control over the situation. So their next technique is actually trying to convince the victim and others to believe that the victim is the problem. And what's one way of doing that is using a mental health illness to push that. And like I stated, most people believe lies over the truth. That's exactly what Decetress did to me. She tried to fart bomb me with saying that I have extreme behaviors or whatever. Weird behaviors. Anyways, it's really dumb. Even my other friends who had seen her saying that were watching, they're like, how the heck does she know what you're going through? or what you do during the day. She hears from me once in a while here and there. She has no idea how my mental health is. She also stated because I didn't fall for her fart bombing is that I should be locked up. Again, being locked up is for somebody who is at the point where they're ready to harm somebody else or harm themselves. And I'm in no way that. That's exactly what my mother and sister by blood had tried to do, is contact my therapist and psychiatrist. And luckily my therapist was smart enough to realize what they were trying to do and told them, Shelley's not a harm to herself or others. Goodbye. Click and blocked. But shark twatters, they keep going along because, again, people will believe lies over the truth easily. So that's exactly what happened there, as for the using mental health as a way to try and convince the victim. And that's where the shark twatters are a problem too, because then they engage in that abuse. And what, like I stated in the part 1 and 2, is how the victim ends up alone and outnumbered. That's exactly the goal of the abuser. They want that victim outnumbered and to feel alone and helpless to the point that they just give up and they surrender. That's the goal of the Assoholic, is to get the victim to surrender. That way they can maintain power and control. I didn't let it happen this time. So, twisting, sharp plunging. That goes along with the shark twatters. That's exactly what Unshorn Wizard had done himself. Even to this day, even in our last conversation, he brought up, well, you've been on YouTube, talking about what, happened about me and blah, blah, blah. Well, you know what? Everything that I'm sharing is based upon the truth of what actually happened, and I have shown evidence of that truth. And again, I'm doing this for educational reasons, to help others understand abuse better, in hopes that in the future that I can make some possible changes. I can't hurt that person anymore. And again, I'm going back to, I'm not going to apologize. I'm not going to apologize for self-defense, which I see is self-respect, because they have done this to me for several years and I kept my mouth shut. I'm not going to keep my mouth shut anymore. I'm not going to silence. Many say, just walk away and I'll go away. I had tried that several times, to just walk away, and they ended up winning, because that's surrendering. I didn't defend myself, and when I surrendered, it got worse and worse, because my relationship with Unshorn Wizard, even after surrendering after the last bullying incident, it got worse and worse and worse. So the walkaway method, that's one main reason why I am totally against it, is because when the victim surrenders, they're doing exactly what the Assoholic wants them to do in order to continue abusing them, and they will come back. Like I stated, also, is with the recent bullying incident, is I hadn't associated with that bullying cult clan or even engaged in groups of any kind for over 6 months, and they still came after me. They recently tried to again, but they failed in their attempts. My understanding is that for a very shocking thing happened, is that Unshorn Wizard decided not to engage in it. I don't know if that's true or not, but hey, that was extremely shocking to me, because based upon what I know about him, is that he always stays, no matter what. That's just, so it's very shocking to me if he actually did go through with it and didn't become a shark twatter again and engage in the abuse against me. So the when they believe the lies, they want the victim to apologize. That's the next attempt. That's exactly what Unsure and Wizard had done. Twisting, sharp plunging. Actually, he still does that, which is what I just described as him stating, me putting this public as to what has happened to me, as though I am to blame for why our relationship has ended. Well, it would have never happened. I wouldn't even have this story if he didn't do wrong to me, which is exactly what he did. He did wrong to me. He deceived and betrayed me. And I defended myself after several years showing the truth and the evidence of what actually happened to me. And I have absolutely no regret for it, and I'm not going to apologize for it, period. I never received an apology from any of the Shartwatters who had harmed me. So I'm not going to go out of my way to apologize when I did it in self-defense. As I've stated, is that is exactly the same as telling somebody who is a victim of a sexual assault that they should apologize to their sexual offender. Exactly the same thing. That's why I stand by it should be domestic violence culture. Is that Assoholics, they want the victim to apologize, and that's a part of why abuse continues. And that's a huge problem. Many people go by the quote of, being the bigger person and apologizing, even when you're really not at fault. That can actually harm the victim even more. And that's how the abuse is enabled to continue and get worse. So the walkaway method and just being the bigger person as saying you're going to take blame for it and apologize when it's really not your fault is actually causing more harm to you. And that's exactly what happened with me and Unsure and Wizard. And that's why the abuse got even worse, is because I apologized for things that were not my fault. I took the blame. So I surrendered. And that was something I regret even now, because in the end it harmed me mainly. It didn't harm him. As I had stated to him, is that if anything, I'm the one that looks like the fool. I'm not him. I'm the one that looks like the fool, that I stayed in a toxic relationship with somebody that treated me in some really cruel and despicable ways. And I stayed in that relationship. That's something that's making me look worse than him. So that's the twisting, the sharp plunging, is trying to get the victim to take blame for something that happened, the abuse that happened. And that's another tool that they use. Manipulation and snark farting. That's what I call it now, snark farting. They try and convince the victim that they had a good, loyal friend. That's exactly what Unsure and Wizard is doing. When they try to get you to apologize, they want to convince the victim to believe that they were the good friend and the victim was the one that caused the problems and they were the bad friend, that they had it good. Believe me, I thought I did. I really did try to ignore it. I did take the blame for the stress that Unsure and Wizard had due to them choosing to abuse me. And that's very hard to talk about, because it's very shameful that I took the blame for it and apologized for it happening, when it was actually, as I admit now, it was his choice to be in that bullying cult clan. He deceived and betrayed me by pretending. That's extremely hard. He was pretending to be my friend. He wasn't my friend. That's very hard to say. Now the next part is the victim card and the sharp fart pity party. That would go with my example in the slideshow, the screenshots of the hate group of the recent bullying incident, where Hate Eradicus was telling Unsure and Wizard that he deserves better, as though, you poor thing. Also, where I had mentioned the sloppy, hypocritical ageism, is where they had attacked Ken, stating that he wanted to, or something about me and him being together in a sexual way or something, who knows. But that's where he ended up being very cruel and despicable, and actually did do what they're now trying to say he didn't say, which I had just proved again with evidence that he did state it. He did state that he saw me as disgusting, annoying, and somebody who would never even consider ever being with, even if I was the last person on earth, type of thing. That's basically what he was saying. And now they're trying to deny it based on one comment, when other comments I just proved that he did state it, and he stated it even before that comment. Because if he meant piling as he didn't want to cause me any more harm, he already did it. So he was lying too. You can't say, I don't want to cause any harm, when you just did exactly that. So the victim card, they made him feel like, yeah, I'm the one that's suffering here, even though it was actually Unsure and Wizard that chose to engage in harm being caused to me. Of course, he has time for doing that, but he had, didn't have time to talk to me. His excuse was he was been busy, and the others also backed him up on that too. But when abuse was happening, boom, he was right there. So that was all hogwash and BS too. So the victim card, and that's also where he tries to tell me that I'm the reason why our relationship broke up. And believe me, I did try to believe that it was my fault, many things, even though deep down inside I knew. Just like I said, the victim is the denial stage. Doesn't mean that the victim doesn't know the truth, but they don't want to have the extreme, painful consequences. So I knew that I didn't do anything wrong, but again, the condition normalized victimization syndrome. Just like that alcohol, I wanted to just pretend that it didn't happen. I wanted, this is what I wanted. I wanted to believe that I finally had a friend that was actually loyal, that actually cared and respected me, for a change in my life that I never had before, because I never even had that with my 3 Assoholics. So it was something sentimental to me that I didn't want to lose. Just like with my father, I didn't want to lose that one person that I first looked up to and respected and thought so highly of. I wanted to keep that image of who that person is, what I wanted to remember them by. But those feelings in between, and ignoring that, that's that alcohol. It's going to come right back. Those feelings in between, that's not going to get me to where I need to be. Where do I need to be? I need to accept that those people are toxic, and that just because I want them to be this, I can't change who they are. I can't make them be a person that is respectable and somebody that I deserve to have in my life. As Unsure and Wizard had told me, is I do deserve better. And I do deserve better than somebody that would treat me in cruel and despicable ways and engage in abuse against me. Just like I deserve better than my 3 Assoholics. Even though they're blood, that doesn't make them family, as a DB shelter told me. Family doesn't have to mean that, just because they're blood, they're my family. Absolutely not. That's not love. What my Assoholics did to me was not love. Just like what Unsure and Wizard did to me, that was not a friend. And that's not somebody who respected and cared about me. And I had to come to accept that. And look at that want and realize that person is not that. And I have to accept that. And I have to, get rid of those feelings and accept that, yeah, I'm going to be ashamed. I'm going to be embarrassed. I'm going to feel sad that what I want isn't actually true. But what I need is to accept that in order to stop suppressing those feelings and ignoring them, dealing with them, and then I'll be able to move on. And that is part of learning self-love and understanding it and having it for yourself, and also self-respect, in order to have healthier relationships. That's where it comes to understanding when people say that you need to love yourself before you can love others. Having self-respect is a part of that, and self-love, as to what I just described and understanding what you do deserve in order to have a healthy relationship. Because you're going to end up just like I have, is where you give and give, that codependency, and it's not equal and it's not coming back to you. Because if you don't love yourself or respect yourself, you're going to let others get away with not respecting you and not caring about your feelings and how they affect you. That's what that means. When somebody says you need to love yourself in order to love others, it's really about, should be, you need to love yourself in order to have healthy relationships that will be positive for you in your life. So that was my examples based on my personal experience, based on part 1 and part 2 of Shartism and the tools that Assoholics use, and how codependency ties along with also conditioned normalized victimization syndrome based upon my own personal experiences. So that'll be it for now. I'm Shelley Rothus, and I'm a different kind of victim. See you next time.